Taylor Decker's on my all-22 fantasy team, by the way.
Stop it. Nobody cares.
Taylor,
I don't care, and I'm in the league.
I'm just trying to hype up the future of fantasy football here. They told me we could hype it up.
Nobody cares about your fantasy team. That's one of the
It's
cardinal
my
rules
way.
of broadcasting. Regardless of the medium, they don't care.
So the strategic component to this game is through the roof.
Your predictions, right? Your forecasting in fantasy football into how good is this player?
It's gonna change the industry.
Yeah, I moved to the old town where it goes down. Look at me now. I wrote my goals down. I hold it down. Made myself proud. Say, look at me now.
Hello and welcome to the All-22 podcast. My name is Chris Lombardi, and I'm joined again by Ray Cotto and Bobby Acker. We are the founders of All-22. Guys, the offseason is rolling now, right? Quarterbacks are starting to come off the market. Let's take no more than 5 minutes and talk about what's going on in the quarterback market. The first domino fell with Derek Carr. We got Aaron Rodgers and Lamar, guys. What are we thinking?
You're just going to gloss right over the guy that got his deal? You're going to gloss right over my boy?
I did.
Go ahead, Bobby. Give us the
No, man.
quick take on Daniel Jones.
So it's funny because, Ray, you as soon as it went through, you're like, Bobby, you called it, and I totally forgot that I called it. I totally forgot. But no, man, it was awesome. I think it's a deal that worked well for both parties. Like, I think I said it to one of you guys. He's a middle class quarterback now with an upper middle class contract, which is totally fair considering he's the last guy to get his contract. It looks like it's 2 years of guarantees, and then from there, it's there's some flexibility. I think it gives the Giants the stability or the ability to go out and aggressively pursue some free agents, which we haven't been able to do in a long time. So I'm excited for the rest of the offseason even more now. But yeah, I'm really happy with how that all shook out.
If you're going to do it with him, like I'm quoting you, I'm not saying this is my take, but a middle-class quarterback, I think he's a good one to do it with because he has the upside of the rushing ability. He has the arm. He can do really it all. We just need to now see it at a more consistent level, and hopefully they get him the receivers and weapons to do that.
I think it's also all about what they let him do. If you go back and watch games from last season, like if you look at specifically the Washington game where the Giants tied with them, it was really frustrating because Daniel was doing everything that was asked of him. They just weren't asking much of him. And you see that time and time again. So, okay, we just paid him like a top 10 quarterback. Now let him go and play like a top 10 quarterback.
Let Russ cook part 2.
Yeah, didn't work out so great, so I don't want to say that.
Okay, cool. So let's move to, you want to do Lamar, Ray?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think last week or the week before we talked about the best fit for Lamar, and I think you mentioned the Atlanta Falcons, and I think that I agree with that too. I'm not sure. Again, a lot of people are saying, what's going to happen here? Are owners colluding to not give him a big deal or something, right? Because you have a lot of reports out there about teams saying, "Oh, I'm not interested." I think that's more of a leverage play than anything else. I think teams don't want to go out there and sort of raise the price on the guy they may be after, which is what you saw happen to Deshaun Watson with all the trouble that was surrounding him. The amount that was given up in order to trade for him and then sign him was a big deal, right? So I think teams are just sort of laying low in that regard with relation to Lamar Jackson. I would love to see him in Atlanta. I would love to see them pull that off, and really, I think that offense would be a lot of fun to watch. But I think it's very early. I think we're in the first quarter of that sort of thing, and it'll be a bit of a marathon because there's a lot to work out there, right? You want a deal that the Ravens won't want to match or won't be able to match, and then, of course, give up 2 first-round picks as well. So there's a lot at play here that's a little bit different from someone like Derek Carr who just signed. But I think, long story short, give me Lamar in a different offense, maybe with some receiver weapons or in a place like Atlanta, and we could see what he can do from there.
Yeah, I'll go back to my take. Like, I still love him in Atlanta. I think that offense has a lot of upside. It matches his strengths really well. But I don't think it's a team ready to win. And that's why I had the take about him going to the Jets, where maybe the offense doesn't fit him as well, but it has the defense, right? It has like a top potentially 3 defense. So him in that system, the way that he can elevate that team if Aaron Rodgers doesn't go there, I think could be just even that much more special.
If I were the Jets, I think I'd prefer that, but I'm not sure if It doesn't seem like they're the ones who can make the move, right? They're zeroing in on Rodgers.
Well, it's that long-term financial commitment you mentioned, right? I think a lot of teams are scared of that. And I think what I really heard you say is the Browns aren't available anymore. So the team that's going to go and make a move like that is off the market. Is there another team willing to do that? I don't know. It's a lot of money. It's kind of unprecedented before Watson. I don't know.
Like you just said, it's a bit unprecedented, right? And how much of this do you think has to do with the fact that he does not have an agent? Do you think this would be done by now had he had somebody representing him? And it's no offense to Lamar Jackson, but I feel like if you're looking for this like historic deal, this huge deal, I feel like you should probably let some professionals take over and kind of do this for him. Look at everybody else who got their deal so far, all working with agents as far as quarterbacks. I don't know. I feel like maybe he's being stubborn, but I think that probably gets it done.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ray.
I was going to say, you bring up a really good point, because I think what would happen by now, I just talked about how you have teams coming out and saying, oh, we're not interested, and we may not fully believe that, right? But an agents are the guys who float the interest out there, right? The agent is usually the source that's saying, oh, hey, the Miami Dolphins are looking at this player, right? To drum up interest in their clients. And so when the player is the client, he's not necessarily doing that, right? So I don't think you could tamper with yourself. That's just a little weird. So I do think in that respect, that may be why this dynamic is so different early on with Lamar. You bring up a good point there.
I see it. You were talking about collusion, owner collusion, and that thing. I keep hearing it, and it kind of bothers me. And we have deals coming up for Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, or not Josh Allen, Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts, and those are guys that are coming off of their best year. Lamar is coming off of like one of his worst, right? And his MVP season is now 3 years behind him. That matters, right? That matters. And I think at the end of the day, when those guys get paid, I can see those deals being more like the Patrick Mahomes deal than it is like the Deshaun Watson deal, where you're getting 250, it's guaranteed. There's no way for the team to opt out. But I think that's not what happens with Burrow and Hurts. I think it's more like the Mahomes, where it's a lot of money. We're going to see some really big figures, but it's going to be every 2 years, somebody has the opportunity to restructure that deal. And I think what Lamar, and to Bobby's point, without having an agent there to guide him towards that direction, he's really hurting himself, pigeonholing himself into trying to get this like massive Deshaun Watson style deal.
He kind of made it clear since even the end of last season that he does not want to be in Baltimore anymore. Yeah, I feel like even if this is where things end up, if Baltimore's saying, okay, you're going to play on this tag, we're not going to see Lamar Jackson in 2023.
It sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks seeing good football players not play football. And he's an amazing football player.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Let's see if he ends up in Atlanta. That'll be fun.
For sure. All right, but 5 minutes are up. So last week, not even last week, it was actually only a few days ago, we did the defensive combine results talking about what happened there. Now let's turn focus to the offensive side of the ball. And let's start with Saturday. Guys, the quarterbacks, receivers, and tight ends worked out on Saturday. And I don't even know if we could talk about this. Like, I want to pose the question to you guys. One guy legitimately broke the combine where, like, I'm not sure I could believe anything that happened. Who the hell is Zach Kuntz? And how did he single-handedly just break the combine? How did that happen?
I think you said his name wrong.
I watched two videos to
said
confirm
it correctly. All right.
that was his name. For the first time, I did homework.
Yeah. So Zach Kuntz is like a slow burn prospect, right? So he actually originally signed with Penn State to play college football in the same recruiting class as Pat Freiermuth. And so Freiermuth was, I mean, you see it in Zach Kuntz now, right? I mean, he's like nearly 6'8". He's like super tall, kind of wiry. He was like a string bean out of high school, right? Needed a lot of time to develop, put on weight, sort of become a grown man. Whereas someone like Freiermuth was more ready-made. He might have been like a freshman All-American. I don't know. And so he kind of fell behind as a result of that, not necessarily because of his athletic ceiling, but because of who he came in with and who basically took the reins first. So then he eventually transfers to Old Dominion. And like we said, he needed time to sort of grow, develop, and mature. And that's where you see this sort of this freak show athlete at the combine this past weekend show up basically from out of nowhere. But yeah, so high athletic upside, definitely not going to be like a blocker. Like he's not a blocking tight end or anything like that, but athletic. And in today's NFL, there's a good place for that. And who knows, he can go into a good landing spot and carve out a real nice role for himself.
Ray, before you say out of nowhere, be careful what you say about the Conference USA. Okay, some really good teams there.
Yeah, maybe one or two really good teams, right?
One in particular, but keep going.
Okay. That's it. That's my Coons take. So
that's your Coons take. Well, the only thing I kind of
you said it wrong again.
Stop it.
I was looking at his numbers, right? He finished top 3 in every category, and he finished first in half of them. That means that not only was he one of the fastest in the 40 and his lateral skills, but he finished top 3 in bench press. Like, you're saying he can't be a blocking tight end, but he might have proved that he's strong enough to do it, right? Like you said, maybe his frame is still not finished. He has more room to grow. 6'7", 255 is still like kind of wiry. But if he gets to like 265, 270 at 6'7", and he's strong and fast, I don't know. It could be cool.
Maybe, but I mean, he's so long, it's hard to get. Yeah, that's not what he's built for. He's built to freaking detach him and go up and get the ball. I think the 6'7" blocking tight end in this class is Darnell Washington, who also had a really good combine, which I think I named him in the sort of freaks to watch list or workout warriors to watch list just before combine weekend. So that's another one, right? It's like you look at them on paper, their measurements are somewhat similar as it relates to height, weight, that sort of thing, but different sort of players where you just see the power. There's that viral video of him going around like blocking the sled versus every other tight end that goes after him. And it's just like a worlds of difference. So when you compare him to that, right, that versus Kuntz, you see where it's like, okay, Kuntz, you're the athlete. I'll put Darnell Washington in line and, he'll knock some heads in there and then maybe go out for some passes every now and again because he's also really athletic and can do that too.
How do you throw to Darnell Washington just 43 times in the season? He only caught 48 passes his entire college career. That's wild. The dude's a monster. How do you not throw him the ball more often?
So my comment on him was, I don't think that his combine showing matched his film at all. Like, he isn't really a receiving prospect. Like, if you watch his film, everything is just like short underneath design dump offs. Like, he never ran real routes. So like, it could be that they just weren't using him well, but it also could be that, like, I don't know, maybe his skill set doesn't match his athletic profile.
To me, I just figured it was like a Georgia thing. It was just the way they were using him. It was like this, Stetson Bennett thing. I really don't know. But it's wild to me because he just looked like a monster among an already impressive group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got that other tight end there too, right? Brock Bowers, who's a phenomenal receiving tight end who's going to be coming out next year, who's just really good. I agree. I don't think Darnell Washington's the type where go run a 10-yard out or a deep corner or something, and he's going to have that sudden shake to break open and gain a ton of separation. But I do think there's more there than what you saw at Georgia, just because, they had Brock Bowers for the receiving game at tight end. And also it's Georgia. I mean, most of their games, they were up by 5 touchdowns by halftime, and we're just basically running out the clock and playing their backups in the second half of games anyway, right? So I think that's a part of it too. So I think there were questions coming in because he didn't show much at Georgia in the receiving game, and he answered some of those athletic questions at the combine, even though you won't see some of that on tape.
Well, he still carried a 78.3 receiving grade in 2022. So you got to think like, hey, maybe some more targets, that gets better, but who knows? I think seeing that run blocking ability, and Ray, you mentioned that the drill he did with the sled, and like my first thought was like, yeah, that's impressive, but that also looked very awkward. Like he looked like a giraffe pushing the sled, like he just looked way too big to be doing that. But yeah, you got to think like his game can translate to the next level.
And I think he's a perfect all 22 tight end, right? So like we're talking about his combine stuff not matching maybe him as his receiving profile, but like him as an all 22 tight end, you love this guy because what he can do to the sled, he's more Martellus Bennett, right? Like it's pretty cool.
I had it as a note later on, but I'll say it now. I would not be surprised if he grades the highest, the earliest of all the tight ends. Not saying he's going to be the best, but I think, his rookie season, 2-3 years in, he's going to be putting up some solid grades, probably earlier than you'll see it from even a guy like Kincaid or whoever.
Mm-hmm. It's a good take.
It's a little
Kincaid.
Yeah.
I'll cut that, but is it Kincaid?
Yeah, Kincaid.
Or Ray,
keep it.
You'll cut that, right?
We're keeping it in. We're plowing through here. So a little unrelated, but like the thought's been going around a little bit about Darnell Washington. What if he just sort of grew and became an offensive tackle? Because like he's huge, he can block really well. What if he goes the Jason Peters route? I'm not sure I'd be against that. Go ahead.
It'd be pretty sick to see like Taysom Hill's like a hybrid quarterback receiver like gadget. If we see that with tackles and tight ends,
Andrew Thomas.
That'd be sick, dude. Mekhi Becton, you saw him. He just dropped a ton of weight. Like he's going to be that guy too. There's a market for it, guys. I'm telling you.
That'd be cool.
Totally.
The Alaskan woolly mammoths will have those.
Yeah, dude. Did you see that they're reviving a woolly mammoth, or they're trying to bring one back within the next 4 years?
Yeah, with like the lab leaks, news of lab leaks and things like that. I don't know how I feel about like just blotching DNA and putting it out there in like the environment.
Yeah, it'll become like a killer woolly mammoth, and just terrorize like the Pacific Northwest. I don't know. It's pretty scary.
It's going to be a woolly mammoth, but they put artificial intelligence in its brain, so it's just like super smart and it knows it's bigger than you.
That'd be dope. Like, yeah, guys, I'll say it again. Those UFOs got shot down. Now we're starting to recreate woolly mammoths. Just saying.
Yeah.
Which is the perfect segue into the next topic, which is what, Chris?
I have no idea. Where did you want to go with this?
I don't know.
It's Coons.
Okay. So who else impressed at the combine? No, who was I excited to see? All right, dude, Richardson. We're talking about like freakish stuff, right? With woolly mammoths. Richardson. There's a segue right there.
I love it.
Anthony Richardson, it was insane at the combine. That's not news at all. But like, Chris, you and I were talking about this a couple of days ago. Like, it shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody. Like, going into the combine, you knew he was going to do this. And then we see it, and then all of a sudden it's like this hot news, and everybody's going berserk. Like, I don't know. I felt like it was a bit overblown. Yes, impressive, but not surprising whatsoever.
If you're surprised by that news, you didn't watch any of his tape because you saw it. You saw all of that. And like, if you just needed that confirmation, a little bit of that extra oomph, you needed that, like, then sure. Okay. Good for you. But he still is a very, very below average thrower of the football, and his accuracy is just so poor.
Yeah,
So like if he ends up being Cam Newton, because Cam Newton missed a lot of throws too. So like if he can work his way up to being as good of a passer as Cam Newton, he definitely has a future in the NFL. And I like him as a prospect, but he should have stayed in college. He should have stayed in college. Needed to cook a little longer.
Yeah. I feel like he struggles to put touch on any of his passes. He's always looking to throw the hell out of the ball when that's not really the throw to make. I feel like if you go back and look at his film, you look at his highlights, whatever, you're seeing like the same 4 or 5 highlights every time. And I just worry about how it translates.
You made a good point. So like when I was like in my athletic days, I was fast, I was quick, whatever. And I would go to shoot a basketball and I'd always miss, right? Because I was like maybe a little too quick. I got a little older, got a little bit slower, got a little less athletic. I could hit shots now, guys. Like, so maybe he just needs to slow down a little bit, and he'll be a better thrower.
Well, just like Anthony Richardson, I'll say the same thing to you, Chris. I got to see it before I believe it.
Wow, let's go.
I'm kidding. I've seen it. Christ, you're so sensitive.
I'm ready anytime.
Everything you said there, Bobby, you could just copy paste for Will Levis. It's the same thing. I don't see a lot of touch, and he's often late or behind on throws to his left. I saw that again at the combine, so I didn't like that. Yes, he could throw it a mile, but this was all baked into the stock price. So while it's impressive, it didn't change my position on either of those guys, right? And CJ Stroud looked phenomenal. So for whatever that's worth, because I try not to take too much away from the combine for quarterbacks because so much more goes into it than obviously just throwing in shorts to players you've never thrown to before with no rush or anything. So, but nothing changed for those guys to me. It's fun to talk about. It was fun to see, but Nothing changed. They still have the same strengths and weaknesses. I'm not changing one from someone who I think needs time to develop and may get somewhere towards their ceiling after 2 or 3 years versus someone who's a little more ready-made. My opinion just stays the same.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned you put them in the same like category right there, because if you go back and look at the Kentucky-Florida game, I feel like you get to see the complete embodiment of both of those two players. Like they should be impressive, but for some reason they're not.
They're just not finished products yet. That's what it is. The one takeaway I had on the quarterbacks, and like I guess this is a positive though. Like I don't think we're trying to be sold a group of quarterbacks that are all these like weird shapes and sizes. Like when you're talking about Richardson, Stroud, and Levis, like they are the perfect size for an NFL quarterback. Like there's nothing you'd really want to change. Like I remember the Trey Lance, Justin Fields, like that draft, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson. Like they were all kind of like Trevor Lawrence is 6'6", but he's like 205 pounds. Like he's like a string bean. And then Zach Wilson is like little short, little small too. And they all have these great skill sets. But like when you put pads on them, who's going to look like an NFL quarterback? And like sometimes that does matter. And I don't think I have any concerns with any of these guys. And even Bryce Young, like he measured in basically the same size as Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray hasn't really, like his problems aren't related to his size. So like I'm fine with it, right? Like it's not that concerning to me.
So you're saying that you want to see the combine in full pads moving forward?
Yes. It means nothing to me how fast you run a 40 without pads on. That's all I'm saying.
I agree.
The only other note I had on quarterbacks, it's just like I'm happy for all the guys like trying to get that backup role, because like Clayton Tune, Stetson Bennett, Max Dugan, Thompson Robinson, Cunningham, all those guys had like good showings, right? They all like pretty athletic guys, like worked well in the drills. Like that's great. That's great stuff. Like I think they all earned a shot.
So are we talking about most impressive guys right now at the combine, or most excited to see?
Whatever you got, give it to me.
Because my favorite player in this draft, okay, it's going to be kind of a hot take, like my Madden quarterback, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I love that guy. I love him. You watch his highlights, you watch his tape, and there's clips where like, you know when you're like so impressed by something, you have like a look of disgust on your face. You're just like, ugh. That's the entire time I'm watching. The entire time. But backed it up with a 4.56 40, the fastest 10-yard split. And like, I don't know why people were so surprised with how well he threw at the combine. He had a 70% pass completion percentage in his senior season at UCLA. Not to mention he's a 5-year starter. Chris, I know you love 4-year starters, a 5-year starter. And it just seemed to get better and better every season that he played. And to see him go to the combine and kill it, I don't know why more people weren't talking about him, because I thought he looked really good. I think a team that has like an athletic quarterback that's looking for a backup is gonna land themselves a really good developmental prospect. If there's any quarterback in this draft that's like, I'll throw out some names like of guys that maybe went after the first round and end up being really good, right? Like the Kirk Cousins, the Russell Wilsons, the Brock Purdy's. Any guy like that in this draft, I really think it's Dorian Thompson-Robinson if he finds himself in the right spot.
I actually love that take. And like a strategy I have in all 22. And
what do you mean actually? What does that mean?
I actually think that was because like some of your takes, you know what I mean? Some of them, I don't know how I feel. That was a great take.
It actually was.
It actually was. Like in all 22 drafts, like I will always go after the 4-year starter. And like, I don't care what round they're drafted. With my 7th round pick, that's a guy I'm going to add to my bench. Just let him sit there. If he doesn't work out, you didn't spend anything on him, you let him go. But like when that guy hits, because 4-year starters that are drafted a little late in the draft have a serious, much higher level of success than other guys at like being drafted later. So like that's something to look forward to. Go do that.
I'm hyped about him. If he comes to New York, man, I'll get a backup quarterback's jersey. I don't care, man. I'll do it.
Like if he's a Jet.
Easy there. I said an athletic quarterback's backup, not Mike White's.
I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers, but okay.
Yeah.
Ray, is there any other quarterbacks you wanted to talk about before we move on?
Not really. I got nothing on potential backup guys. Just good on everyone else besides Stetson Bennett for skipping the Senior Bowl and not getting drunk. So
You made a face. I feel like you don't like DTR.
yeah, it's just, he's a backup quarterback. I'll talk about him when he gives me something to talk about.
Okay.
Like I appreciate your take on him because that's my blind spot.
What do you mean it's your blind spot?
I don't spend much time on him. I know that's what you look at that, right? That's sort of your realm. So outside of like the top guys, that are projected to be starters in the league in their first year or two.
Yeah.
I usually look at those guys last.
Sometimes I forget Sean Clifford's your quarterback and
Yeah,
that's like
everybody looks good.
And that's your measuring stick. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
It probably makes everything else look blurry. Yeah,
Exactly.
I get it.
Anybody in the receiver group that you guys liked that was exciting to you?
So I'll start with the low hanging fruit first. I thought Jackson Smith and Jigba had a really good weekend, and he kind of needed it, right? Because he didn't play all year. So he was kind of a forgotten man, and some were like, okay, maybe he's a late first round type of player. He has questions about his speed, and I know he didn't run his 40, but he did pretty much everything else and looked really good doing it, had great measurements, great agility, and basically just reminded everybody of why 6 months ago he was projected to be the top receiver in this class, bar none. So I thought he really helped himself, probably more than any other offensive player in the entire combine, in my opinion, by just solidifying himself as a top half of the first round wide receiver. And he didn't even run a 40. So I was really impressed with him, and maybe I shouldn't have been surprised. Maybe it was just more so, you just haven't seen him in a while and you forgot how good this guy really is.
Wasn't his 40 like one of the big question marks about him?
It was, but when he checks every other box, then it's almost like, then I don't care so much. I mean, his shuttle and 3-cone were awesome. Great broad jump. So you see the explosion there. 6 foot, over 6 foot, just under 200 pounds. So, I mean, it's size-wise, he's right where you want him to be. And, I mean, his tape is phenomenal. So, I get it. The 40 is a bit of a question, but I mean, to look at the other receivers in this class too, right? We had a bunch of guys who thought we were going to run really fast and kind of disappointed with their 40 times. So maybe it's a slow track. Maybe it's this class as a whole is not as fast as we thought it was. And that's another thing that these guys aren't separating themselves from a guy like Smith and Jigba with, right? We thought Jalen Hyatt might run like a 4.28. He ran in the 4.4s. So, I get it. I would have loved to see him run the 40. And normally I'm more critical of guys who don't, because that always raises like a red flag to me. And I just don't like that. Right. But he just looked really good, his agility stuff. And that is objectively, to me anyway, more important to me. So yeah, I got to say he stock up for Smith and Jigba.
Yeah. You have to think like if he had just taken the Jamar Chase route and not played at all, instead of like having an injury after his amazing sophomore year, everybody would just be talking about him like he's the guaranteed number one receiver. But because he played and he got hurt, it's kind of, you don't like to see that, right? The 40 time thing, he's going to run it at his pro day. It's an Ohio State pro day, so he's going to run a 4.3. So nobody will be worrying about that anymore. But
good 38-yard dash.
Yeah, exactly. The guy I was excited about seeing his success was Rashee Rice. And my kind of like comp for him post combine reminds me a lot of Corey Davis. And like, I was a huge Corey Davis guy. So that says something, even though Corey Davis hasn't necessarily panned out. But 6'1", 204, ran a 4.51. He had the fourth best 10-yard split at a 1.49. He had a 41-inch vert, which is like insane at 200 pounds. All this tells me he's a really explosive athlete, really good size receiver. But he played for SMU, kind of a small school. A lot of his film, if you watch his highlight tapes, it's all contested catches, which makes me think he has trouble separating, which is a little concerning. But all of that is exactly what we saw from Corey Davis. And Corey Davis, got a second contract. So Rashee Rice, maybe, a late second, third round pick, and that's probably what Corey Davis should have been. So should be a good spot for him somewhere.
Yeah, well, you said there too. So he was my next name. Maybe I should have mentioned it first. So, but what you said there though about seeing the contested catches on film, So it's the exact opposite of Smith and Jigba. I would have loved to see agility numbers for Rashee Rice to maybe help either answer some questions, just provide clarity around that and his base athleticism as it relates to that agility, because that, of course, is sort of what gives you the ability to separate in those routes. And so we didn't see that. So he's an explosive linear athlete at the combine. And then when you watch tape, he's an explosive linear athlete. So you just got to go off of the idea that he's an explosive linear athlete. So what do you do with that at receiver? Because a lot of those guys do bust. It's tough for those guys to succeed in this league with the way passing games are nowadays, where it's those sort of shifty, more agile guys creating separation that are really the heart of offenses nowadays. So I don't know. He posted some good numbers, but I'm not sure he answered any questions.
Speaking of those shifty guys, I was super excited to see Zay Flowers is an easy one, right? But I was still really excited to see him. And since he's Tyler Scott, I've seen both of those guys draw comparisons to T.Y. Hilton. So to get to see those guys apples to apples was something I was really excited for. And I think Zay Flowers looked outstanding. I mean, every drill he made just looked effortless. Really good hands, looked super shifty, quick in and out of his cuts. He looked really good. And for everybody who's all over Jalen Hyatt, one of those linear, like straight line speed guys, Jalen Hyatt ran a 4.4 flat and Flowers ran a 4.42. So like, it's really pretty comparable if kind of comparing it apples to apples. So it seems like Flowers has like that speed, that top end speed, and the quickness to get some separation too. So I thought Zay Flowers made it pretty clear that he is one of the top, if not the top receiver in the draft. I mean, obviously there's Quentin Johnson and JSN, but I think he's right up there with those three guys. Just depends on what you like.
Let's stay on him for a minute. I loved what he did at the combine, and actually watching his tape after I saw people comparing him to Antonio Brown, couldn't get it out of my head. And do I think he has it in him? Yes. Do I think he's that? I don't know. But a guy that small, if I'm a team that needs a first round receiver, do I want to do that? Right? Like I remember the Ravens did that with Marquise Brown and didn't really work out. Are you comfortable taking a guy like that in the first round to be your number one receiver? And Bobby, I think that's a good question for you as a Giant fan.
Yeah, he's actually who I'm hoping and praying for at 25, because I feel like he's not only one. I've heard somebody say that adding him with Wan'Dale Robinson is a little bit redundant, and I really don't agree, because I think you can get the guy that stretches the field, which you don't get in Wan'Dale. Wan'Dale's more the underneath guy, the guy that goes sideline to sideline. So I think Zay can give you that downfield threat, but also gets separation. He's not obviously not a contested catch guy, which I think the Giants are looking to get away from. That's why things with Kenny Galladay didn't work out. That's why you're not going to see them go after Hopkins or any of these big guys coming out in free agency. So I think Flowers is a perfect fit there, and I would love to see the Giants grab him at 25 if he's there.
Okay. One other thing I'll say I liked about him, he didn't show up with an extra 20 pounds of muscle that looked just like unnatural, right? I remember that with Jalen Reagor. Like I was a huge Reagor fan. I loved his film in college. He showed up the combine and ran way slower than he was supposed to. He was all bulky. And I feel like he kind of just ruined himself. Like he got away from what made him a good receiver. And I don't think Zay made the same mistake.
That's a good point. Getting 20 pounds of muscle and still running a 4.42. That's awesome. Right.
Yep, exactly. So talking about just another guy that impressed, Quentin Johnson, he was probably the only guy that was prototypical X receiver, 6'3", 208, and a pretty good 40 time. I don't want to talk about him too much because I don't think his film is really translatable yet. I think he's going to take a lot of work, but he was a winner just in terms of he's actually 6'3", 208 pounds and fast. So it's another guy. Is there anybody else you guys had?
Nah, I'm done with the little guys. It's all the ready for the big guys if you are.
Well, before we move on to Sunday, do we want to talk disappointments from Saturday?
Mine was just that Will Levis was kind of douchey. And then Jordan Addison, I felt like was just, I mean, we kind of touched on it before the pod. Really just wasn't amazing. A 4.4 940, which is, okay, it's average. But a 34-inch vert, 10-foot 2-inch broad jump. Like, I feel like he didn't show the athleticism that you'd hope to see from somebody who's, 173 pounds. So that was a little bit disappointing.
So stand on Jordan Addison, feel the same way. I compared his film to some of the top receivers we've seen coming out. Like, I think he is that talented on film. Coming out and doing this combine and showing those numbers makes you think that he's not one of those guys. When you compare him to the combines of a Justin Jefferson, combines of other guys like that size, the best route runners in the NFL, he's not that, right? He's not fast enough. He's not 6'1". He's not close to 200 pounds. So those are all concerns. But when I went back and thought about it a little bit more, you look at a guy like Devonta Smith, who was also extremely undersized and didn't do anything at the combine. And I think to myself, Devonta Smith has shown in the league that he is a great receiver. Like, yes, he needed A.J. Brown to go there to really break out, but he had an amazing season last year. And if Jordan Addison can be that, I still think he has an opportunity to have a lot of success in the NFL. Just not sure he can really be anybody's number one and only option. Like, I wouldn't like him for the Giants anymore.
Right. I think landing spots can have a big part of his success at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as with anybody, but especially him.
I'm going to go away from Jordan Addison unless you want to close out on him.
Let me say one more thing, because saying that, I actually really like him still to the Packers at pick, what do we have, 15? Because I think if you compare him with Christian Watson, and Christian Watson is the guy that people are focusing on, and then you have Jordan Addison being like the true route runner, I really like that. I would really like that for whoever's the quarterback, if it's Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love. So I'm actually over here kind of praying that we still take him. But okay.
I hope you do too.
Who are you moving to?
So Kayshon Boutte is someone who really did not help himself at the combine. He had a lot of questions going in, just surrounding him off the field, right? With some of the character concerns and the stuff that went on at LSU at the end of his career, right? You look at him and you're like, okay, this guy was a fantastic freshman, had some injuries, then a coaching change, and then wasn't really involved, and then had this weird suspension type saga at the end of his junior year. And so now you want to see him at the combine. Yes, the interviews are very important, right? And we don't get to see that part of it, right? Teams are going to grill him about the stuff that happened in college with him. But you also wanted to see if that athlete that you saw 2 years ago is still there, right? And is he a dynamic player who may have just had a bad run of things for 2 years? Sometimes things just happen. And instead, he just really disappointed. Measured under 6 feet, 195 pounds, ran a 4.5, but his vertical jump was just 29 inches. Dropped some balls there, just didn't look impressive at all on the field. So when you combine that with the questions surrounding him off the field, it's tough to see. I think he might have dropped a full round at least, to maybe he's like a late day 2 guy now in the NFL draft, when if he had a great combine, maybe could have been a late first round pick and someone who a team would have invested more into, and would have been someone that could have been on our radar as all 22 managers. So I think his stock fell big time. And unless he comes out, or it comes out, that he's still dealing with issues from an injury he suffered this past year or something, and then he clears this up big time at his pro day, I think his stock is way down.
Okay. The last guy I'll mention before we move to Sunday is just Michael Mayer. Huge disappointment. When I watched this film, I thought he was definitely the number 1 tight end, because I thought he was the guy that was big enough, strong enough to do both, be a blocker, be a receiver. His receiving film was really, really special. His blocking skill looked good on film, but now he comes out and he's actually one of the smaller tight ends. He's under 6'5". He's under 250 pounds. He has below average athleticism. I wouldn't touch him in a top 45 pick. And people were talking about him being top 15. So definitely would stay away from a guy like him now. I know we're getting tight on time, so let's move to Sunday. Offensive line and running back. Let's just jump into it, guys. Who on the offensive line stood out to you? Either one of you, just take it. Who were the guys for you?
I mean, Paris Johnson was the guy who I was most excited to see. Just looks like a freak. He's one of my favorite offensive line prospects for this year. And I feel like he backed it up. He did well in the combine. But the guy that I was really excited to see was Cody Mauch. Honestly, I was just excited to see his red hair and his missing teeth at the combine. Like, it's awesome. And it's funny because I've seen an Alex Kappa comp with him, and I feel like that's just as lazy as Ray's Jason Sehorn comp for Riley Moss.
That wasn't an honest comp.
Equally as lazy. Thought those two guys were impressive. Wouldn't mind. I know interior offensive line's like not a deep spot in this draft, but again, looking at like my favorite team, I would love to have Cody Mauk. But I was also really impressed with Andrew Voorhees. I mean, really sucked to see him get hurt, but was really impressed with what he did the next day and go and kill it in the bench press with 38 reps after tearing his ACL. That was really cool to see, and how could you not be impressed by that?
People were saying like it's not impressive because he hurt his leg. It doesn't affect his upper body. Like, have those people ever benched before? Like, have they ever like tried to push 225 pounds without their legs under them? Like, that's hard to do. And he did it 38 times. Like, that's super impressive. Yeah.
I think most guys probably would have packed up and went home. So I think that was really, really cool.
And you know what's crazy is like when I watched film, if I did my ratings on film before the combine, and he was like one of my top interior offensive linemen. And it's funny because my note on him is he's built like a tackle. I don't know why he didn't play tackle at USC, but he played guard really well. So he's a little bit older. I hope a team still takes a chance on him. I'm sure they will, but it's probably going to hurt his stock quite a little bit. Your note on Paris Johnson, couldn't agree more. I think him and Broderick Jones, like there wasn't really questions on their athleticism, but they went there and proved that they were every bit as athletic as you thought they were. So that's great. I'm excited for those guys. Blake Freeland, another guy like BYU, 6'8", 302 pounds. He's a little bit of a string bean, needs to gain some weight, but like, holy cow, he was near the top of every category. He's another one of those guys. The only thing I will say is he didn't bench, right? So if you're 6'8", 300 pounds and kill it in the with your athleticism, but then you don't bench, it might prove everybody's point that maybe you are too skinny to play in the league at that size. And like being an athlete that's not the most important thing. You need to be strong enough in the league to be a top tackle.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So staying on Paris Johnson here a little bit too, right? Yes. Super athletic. I was excited to see him too. And I think he, acquitted himself very well. I think it was interesting. You had Broderick Jones, Paris Johnson, and DeJuan Jones sort of all going back to back to back in the different movement drills. And it was interesting to see the difference in how those guys move compared to each other, right? So like DeJuan Jones is obviously huge, right? Measured really well, had like 36 plus inch arms, was just like his measurements are insane from a size perspective, right? 40-yard dash, whatever, 5.35, that's actually not that bad for someone who's 374 pounds. But you see the movement side to side. You see the difference in someone like Broderick Jones and Paris Johnson, and then watching someone like DeJuan Jones, who you say, yeah, definitely if he succeeds, he's just going to be more of like a power right tackle type player in the NFL. And that's why, to me, I still have him a notch below guys like Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, and Darnell Wright at offensive tackle. Staying with offensive tackle, another guy that I'm actually not very high on, but I think he looked good this past weekend was Peter Skoronski at Northwestern. He's not even close to Rashawn Slater. That's a lazy comparison. That's a very lazy comparison. Not even close, but he looked a little more athletic than I expected him to. I don't like he just doesn't seem to have a lot of power in his game. I think Northwestern kind of helped him out a lot, and that's something I don't really want to see for someone who I'm drafting at offensive tackle in the first round. And if you're saying he's a guard, you want to slide him inside, I need someone who's a little more powerful, right? So, sticking to just the combine stuff, though, I think he looked well movement-wise, and that was good to see because I was still kind of on the fence on that part of it too, and at least he showed out pretty well there.
Yeah, I agree with that. A couple other guys on the interior I'll just mention quickly. I'm going to say it like a New York Italian, Steve Avila. I don't know if that's how you say his name. He was my number one guard prospect, and I think he did fine. Like nothing stood out as amazing, but he was competitive in everything. And you know what? Like he did everything. And to me, that does say something. A guy that's trying to earn his spot. And I think all of these guards need to be doing that because none of them are great. And a guy that was a major disappointment in my eyes was Osiris Torrance. I will say he participated in all the drills, so I'll give him that. But people are talking about him as this like special guard that should go maybe in the top 20. And I just don't see it, right? He wasn't a special athlete. Yes, he's big. He's 6'5", 330, but he's like, his film doesn't show it. He wasn't a special athlete. So like, to me, I just couldn't comprehend taking him. Like I've seen a lot of teams mocked him in the first round, and I would definitely stay away.
He's going to get drafted pretty highly in all 22 leagues because there's not a lot of good guards in the league right now, and a lot of teams probably need it. So it's probably going to go higher than you would expect in rookie drafts this summer.
Go for a Villa. All right, quickly, let's move to running back. Who wants to take the first shot at running back?
Sure. Running backs I was excited for, Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell is one of my favorite running backs in this class. Incredibly dynamic and always looked like the best athlete on the field at ECU. And he was a lot of fun to watch in the combine. Backed it up in the drills, especially his positional drills as a receiver. Those are a lot of fun to watch with him. He definitely looked better than most guys in the class in those drills. And I knew he was fast. I did not realize he was 4.3 fast. That was super impressive. I was really also excited to see Devin Achane. That's how you say his last name.
Achane, yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to see his 40. That's it. And that was awesome to see. It was so cool. I really want to see somebody break John Ross's record because I don't know. I just want to see it.
It'd be nice to have a good football player break his record.
Yeah. I thought he had a chance, but yeah, that was still fun to watch anyway. And Cam Peoples from Appalachian State. So Cam Peoples looks like a wide receiver that's playing running back, and it's super awkward. Like he just kind of looks like a giraffe running around like really fast. But like as awkward as it is, it's also like impressive at the same time. Just not sure how it translates into the league. But yeah, thought he looked really good at the combine.
Keaton Mitchell, like people need to understand how impressive it is for somebody 5'8" to run a 4.3 something 40 time because they don't have the length. Like it's, you know, like for every step that somebody 6'3" takes, they have to take 2. You know what I mean? And like, that's crazy that he ran that fast. So love that too.
Yeah, you kind of took my note here. I didn't have a ton on the running backs, but was also interested in seeing Devin Achane. And the great thing about a prospect like him is, again, we're talking about all 22, right? So you look at his size, like, oh, he measured in at 188 pounds or whatever it was. So it's like, oh, he's not a feature back. He's not going to get the ball 20 times a game or 17 times a game, right? He's not going to be a bell cow. But he's showed great speed, some receiving upside there, right? He's a big play type threat. And so he's athletic enough and a good enough football player to carve a large enough role for himself to where he is worth it to roster in your all 22 leagues and have a big role on your offense, which is what he'll do in the pros, right? He's not going to be a bell cow, but he's going to have a large, important role wherever he lands on offense. So I think it was good to see him at least back up his speed numbers and not necessarily, kind of like you alluded to earlier, Chris, drink 5 gallons of water and just come in like way overweight to try to prove something size-wise that we know is not his game. So I was not pleasantly surprised, but pleased to see Achane's overall combine performance in that respect.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of guys I thought were like a little bit disappointments was Tank Bigsby and how do you say Zach's name from UCLA? Charbonnet. Yeah. So those guys were a little disappointing to me. Like I've been looking for the Nick Chubb, like in a draft where everybody's saying it's a super deep running back draft. I want to find those guys, like a Nick Chubb that's going to be slept on. He's going to go in the late second round. Team's going to take a chance on him and he's going to break out. And those were kind of 2 of the guys I was looking at for that. And they were disappointing athletically. Like they didn't come close to matching his athletic profile. And then also Gibbs from Alabama. Like, yes, he did all right. You know, he's super fast, but that's not a surprise. But being only 5'9" and under 200 pounds, don't know if he could really be a bell cow anywhere now. And that's pretty disappointing to me. I thought he was going to be an every down back.
Okay. I'll push back a little bit. I still really like Jahmyr Gibbs. I think his tape is good enough that like, I don't care size-wise. I think he's still that dude. Agree. I also had my eye and was excited to watch Tank Bigsby. Wanted to see a bit more from him. He also skipped like 4 bags during that one drill. But I think it's still all about situation for someone like Tank Bigsby. He didn't test so poorly that it's like I'm completely writing him off now or anything like that. I think if he still goes into a good situation to carve out a role for himself, I think his tape is good enough to where he will be worth rostering in some leagues. But he certainly didn't sort of catapult himself like I thought he might be able to.
Agreed. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. And not that they shouldn't be rostered. And I agree with you on your Gibbs take. Like, I think his film is special. Like, that's why I wanted to see that he comes in there and he's actually 5'11", 205. And I have full confidence making that pick. Being that undersized is pretty hard because there's not many running backs in the NFL that are that size and are bell cows and can stay healthy. But I mean, we can't go this whole time without mentioning Bijan, right? So Bijan looked really great. He was smooth. I think the only takeaway that I will say as a negative is when you're comparing him to the other guys that are talked about in the same breath, like a Zeke, like a Saquon, like a Fournette, those guys are much bigger than him. They are all over 6 feet tall. They are all 230 plus pounds. He's 5'11", 215. So you're talking about a totally different size back. Yes, he looked great in all the drills. His film is incredible. But I think if you're going to try to make a comp for him, don't talk about those guys. If you're going to say McCaffrey, I think that's fine. That's more in tune with his skill set and his size. But I don't think you should be talking about him like a Saquon, like a Fournette, like a Zeke. No pushback.
Yeah, I'm pushing back. I don't care. His film is that damn good. And he's probably going to get drafted to a good team because the league knows well enough to not draft those guys in the top 5 anymore.
Do the Falcons know that?
If they get Lamar Jackson, who cares? Imagine him with Lamar Jackson opening up, the running game for him. That's even better. But
they wouldn't have the pick then, isn't that right?
It depends. I'm not sure how that whole thing works with if it's then the next 2 first-round picks. To be honest, I'm not sure how that works. But they would work it out. But
Sure.
I think regardless, so I think his tape is that good. And, 215 is fine. I think. And I guess part of that is rooted in the fact that I thought as prospects overall, especially Fournette, but Fournette and Zeke were a little overrated. I think I don't think they were. I mean, to be drafted that high, you have to have Saquon type ability and Saquon type film. Neither of them had that. They had really good tape, really good measurables, but it's just different when you're talking that high of a pick. And so for Bijan to have pretty much everything else but not be 220 plus, and just he plays with such a high IQ is how he sets up his blocks and everything else, which is better than maybe all those other guys were at that sort of nuance, stuff as a running back. I'm perfectly fine with wherever he ends up. I think he's the type of back that can actually be successful behind a not great offensive line. So if he goes anywhere that's better than that, stock's to the moon.
Well, I think you misinterpreted what I said because of me comparing him to McCaffrey. McCaffrey was still a top 10 pick, right? So he's good enough to be there. He should be in that conversation. I just think I've heard too many people saying he's Saquon, and they're just so different build. They were built so differently, and their skill set might translate in the league very differently. So I like him more as a McCaffrey comp to a Saquon comp or a Fournette comp or a Zeke comp.
It's fair.
That's it. That was pretty good, guys. We did all right. Overall, I was going to start the conversation with this, but I'm going to end it with it. Overall, how would you compare this offensive group to this defensive group?
Ooh. Defense is way better.
I think because edge is so deep and there's so much position value there, I'd have to agree with Ray.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you guys too. I think this quarterback group is better than people are giving it credit for, and that is bolstering the entire offensive group. I think every other position, maybe besides running back, is pretty below average. And on defense, I think you have a lot of depth at corner, at edge, at defensive interior. So I agree with you. I think it's a defensive heavy draft, we're going to say.
Once we get that practice squad feature going, DTR, baby. DTR is the first guy on my practice squad.
You won't have any resistance from me.
Well, till that day, give us a follow on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at all22_PFF. Leave us a review wherever you're listening to your podcast. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be on later this week or early next week to talk about free agents. So we look forward to talking to you then.
touchdown.